Hey friends, welcome to Financial Sobriety School. I'm your host, Linda Parmar. I am a financial sobriety expert and founder of Financial Sobriety School. I specialize in helping women who are in recovery help heal their relationship with money. Welcome to lesson 28. Super grateful you're here today, and I am super stoked to talk about my financial sobriety routine. And my story has many layers to it. I've told my story a couple times on here. One, when I first started the podcast, Your Money, Your Recovery. So you can still get that under this podcast name, which is now Financial Sobriety School. But you can still have my first iteration of telling my story. And then I also do an update to that in part two of that. So I'm going to link that in the show notes and also in the blog and on YouTube if you are watching or reading this lesson. Because my story and kind of how I got to where I am, I think is important. And I think that a lot of people, ask me, how did you do it? Like, what did you do? What's your system? And the great thing about it is I actually do teach what I do myself, like in my work today. And I think that's a really important piece of my work and my message and what I tell people is because like I'm actually doing it. It's not something that I'm like, "Hey, let's just kind of try this and see how it works." And I actually teach like what I know works. And the beautiful thing is when I get to also work with people is that everybody's learning is different. Everything is different about how people take in information and kind of how they like to, interact with their money and what their routine looks like. And we get to, really figure out what works for you when we work together. So know that what I'm recommending or what I'm saying is my routine doesn't necessarily always work for everybody. It's pretty touchstone in regards to like there's an iteration of it that I teach. I kind of just change the flavor of it a little bit, but it's all kind of the same bones, let's say, of, what I know to be true. And I'm really grateful. And I have actually never been able to say this. I am grateful for my time in the bank. I can't believe I just said that out loud. But at the same time, it did teach me a lot about finances overall. It taught me like how to use finances and use my house as a wallet, and I took full advantage of it. But at the same time, it also taught me how scared people were of money. It taught me that, just that basic, and I call it basic, and not wanting to because that might sound kind of shaming because, like, I think of it as basic knowledge, but also wanna honor that financial literacy is not really something people have been taught. So that's where I also like to take a step back from things because I know that what people have heard or do with their money and have been taught about their money, everything's completely different. And not, I would say, like, I'm just gonna throw something out there, but I would say maybe 10% of the population actually know what they're doing with their money. And so if you're saying like, "Oh, yay, I'm part of the 90%," welcome. Because that's why I'm here, right? To help support you in that way. So I wanted to talk about what my financial sobriety routine looks like. So essentially what I'm going to be talking about today is, things that I do day to day, maybe they're every week, every month, but things that I know are part of they're just non-negotiables now for my money. And what I'll say is that at first it doesn't feel natural to do this like routine, and I find that it takes people some time to even feel comfortable looking at numbers, feel comfortable just overall, and that's okay because financial sobriety is not a destination, it's a journey you're going to go on. And I know that it has taken a lot of time to get to where I am today compared to where I was. And, time seems to be ticking by really fast. And so when I think about how long I've been on this journey, and I always have to look at my money coaching designation. So 7 years now I've been um wow, 7 years now I've been on this journey. And I actually was certified at this time in 2017 as a certified money coach. Wow, that just kind of hit me because, time just goes so fast. And it's like, yeah, 7 years I started this. So this routine that I'm going to talk about today has taken 7 years to like not even perfect because we still have moments. Like my husband and I actually like I'm going to talk about some things that I do all the time. And one of those things is a money meeting. But my husband and I looked at each other and this weekend and we were like, "Okay, we really need to sit down and do this." It had been a while since we had done it. And it just brought up the importance of that's a non-negotiable now. We're like, "Okay, this is when we're gonna have it. This is when we're gonna do it," because if you don't, it's all of a sudden like, "Oh, why is there a balance on this credit card?" And, "Oh, like, we're having to pay our property taxes, and my business insurance went through," and there was a bunch of stuff, and it was like, okay, no wonder it feels tight right now, right? But then it just gives you that information to be able to make, like, decisions going out into the world. So, when I first started my journey, I did hire a money coach. And I hired a money coach through the institution that I initially did my money coach training through. Did a lot of research on what that looked like. So, know that I started my journey hiring a money coach to work on my crap because, like, I needed to understand my mess before I could turn it into my message. So, know that I did start with that. But when it comes to daily, weekly, monthly habits. So I create a monthly spending plan. So every month can be different, right? So always really important, I think, to create a monthly spending plan because it is one of those things that like summer's here, right? And my last lesson was on sober spending summer edition because summer looks different when it comes to expenses and things that you do. And so every month is really important to have a look at your fixed expenses. A lot of times though just don't change, but really making sure, okay, like what does that look like for this month? And then your variable expenses. And so I like to keep it super simple that way of like, okay, I have my fixed expenses, my variable expenses. So variable expenses could be like gas, groceries, eating out, things that kind of fluctuate, and that can be different for everyone. So creating a monthly spending plan and tracking that spending. And I think one of the best things that I love to do, and it's still something I do, even though like Sunny and I weren't sitting down having a money meeting regularly, one thing that I do is like a daily spending overview, right? So it's like, okay, what do I have to do today? How much do I need to spend? Is that on my spending plan? Where am I on my spending plan? And I do kind of an overall, like, weekly review of my spending plan to really get specific on where I am. But it is also like a great daily habit, especially when you first start working on your money. It's that connection, right? That, like, okay, where am I at? And it's just information, reminding yourself, like, this is just information and not trying to go too much into like fear or worry or go back into sort of like that doom kind of thoughts about like past decisions that you've made. And I also want to honor that those things are going to come up. And part of your financial sobriety journey is going to be understanding what to do with those emotions when they come up. And sitting in that stuff does isn't what's best for you. I know that for sure. Honor it, feel it, work through it, and then move forward. But when it comes to the tracking, I actually have a tracking system that I've made just on Google Drive. And it's something like if you take one of my courses is included in that. And it is very simple. There's a lot of great like apps out there. What's hard, and you've probably heard me say this plenty of times now, but the it's ever changing when it comes to, apps and, like, tracking apps, and my go-to was always Mint because it was pretty intuitive, it was pretty not super easy to set up because all of them take some time to, like, get the system working for you, but it was free, it was okay, right, for what it was. And it was one that I knew that I could get here in Canada and that my clients could get in the States. And now Mint is no longer. And so there's so many in the States that I can't access here in Canada, which is so frustrating for me. But I know one that a few of my clients are using right now, which is Rocket Money. So one of those things that is really easy to, have it all in one place. But I also say, like, when it comes to tracking, especially when you're first starting this journey with money, is to do that manual tracking is really, really important at first. Sure, that's not going to be your forever. And that's actually one of my biggest messages with your financial sobriety overall. This isn't your forever. You're going to move forward. This is your starting point. And so, maybe just doing that manual tracking in a spreadsheet is something that works at first, just to get you really understanding your money, connecting to the emotions, understanding your spending, and then you might graduate to a budgeting app from there. But, doing that, checking in, where am I at? What am I going to spend today? Do I need that? Don't I need that? So you don't find yourself like, pulling into a store and just like kind of mindlessly walking in where like if you've set it up in the day as part of your morning routine, like, okay, this is my planned spending. This is what I'm going to do today. Instead of it being like, okay, I don't know where I'm at. Let's just go walk into a store and not really pay attention, which is really normal. So, wanting to just to bring that importance of what that means for your routine, to have a daily connection with your money at first. I was talking about the money dates, money meetings. That's another thing that is, as I said, that Sunny and I were like, hey, we haven't done this. Like, we need to get back at this. And we discovered, like, oh, yeah, this is why you really have to do it. Because you can assume like all your systems and everything are happening in the background, especially when you've been doing this for the time that I have. But no, there was still things that came up that was like, okay, like what's happening this month? What's happening this summer? Oh, this happened like last month. So, really, really important to sit down with yourself, or if you have a partner, sitting down with them or someone you share money with. I have a whole lesson that I've done, or episode that I've done, in regards to money dates because I think they're really important. I'll put those in the show notes as well. And also with the understanding that money can be really, really activating for both parties. And so, you know, it's not a surprise, and it's something probably a lot of people know is that um, when it comes to money, it can be one of the biggest reasons for divorce, right? And it is one of those things that when people aren't communicating or they find it hard to communicate, and again, just really honoring that that's what's happening a lot of the time. Two money stories and two money backgrounds and two beliefs about money are trying to come together. And sometimes it just feels like your heads are, like smashing together and tensions are high. And maybe setting some boundaries like, oh, what is this conversation going to look like? What are some things you feel comfortable with, what don't you want to talk about, what do you want to talk about, and just getting into a groove and seeing how that feels. One thing that I also do is I don't use credit cards. And Some people challenge me on this, and again, this is gonna come down to everybody has different ways that they do things, and me and credit cards, like, we have, like, so for example, like, my business insurance automatically went through on one of the credit cards. My daughter's summer camp automatically went through on one of the credit cards. And so those are when I do use those sort of things. So it's not like I don't completely use them, but at the same time, it is something that I know is coming up every year because I'm counting for them in like annual expenses. But I don't have a credit card that I'm just able to reach into my wallet and grab and, it has a huge credit limit on it. Like I have one that has a $500 credit limit that I keep in my wallet just in case. But it also keeps me quote unquote safe, feeling safer because like I know that I'm not going to walk into winners like I did when I blackout spent and it was over like $800 and I just like went to town and like if I feel like okay with $500. It can get a little bit tricky like I had some dental work just done as well and I knew that like my limit on my the $500 wasn't going to be enough and I knew that when it came to like my limit for spending on my debit card wasn't going to work. I have a credit card with a larger than $500 credit limit. I brought that credit card like planning knowing I would need it. So different ways to work around that, but I don't have a large credit limit, credit cards sitting there like partying in my wallet. Like, no, we don't need that credit card. That credit card's gone. Because I, 7 years later, I'm not going to say, well, I want to do it for the points. And you know how I feel about that if you've been here for a bit. Like, I will argue you to like I will what do they say? I will die on that hill of like, okay, like, but a lot of people I'm talking to aren't like responsibly using that credit card for points. And, hardly any. I would say maybe like in my 7 years of running my business, there's maybe been like 3 or 4 that are like, yep, I can do this now. Or like maybe they've done it in the future, like as years gone on. But me and credit cards, like we gotta be careful with each other. We gotta have boundaries. Money boundaries are really important. Um, so yes, no credit cards, partying in my wallet. I have pre-authorized transfers set up for my savings plans, so that when the money goes into my account, then it's automatically goes into a savings account. So you can set this up usually with your online banking or like calling your bank, going into your bank. Usually you can just do it all online to set an automatic transfer into a savings account. So just and doing it so that it's automatically doing it for you on certain days of the month. And you could just be starting with like $25 on the first of every month. Starting somewhere is great. And being able to set up that pre authorized thing so it's happening while you sleep in the background. Again, starting to make systems, right? Like a system that works for you with your money. Systems are a game changer when it comes to money because then you start to sift through those emotions and stuff when you first start working on your money. But once your system starts to really work, then it starts to just take that all away and just like, okay, yeah, we're doing this, we're gathering that information. But pre authorized transfers or even like automatic payments onto credit cards. This was a big one when I first started working on my money was I would set it up so like a minimum payment automatically came out of my checking account because what would happen is that I honestly had so many credit cards that I couldn't keep track of. It was like the rob Peter to pay Paul. It was like the whack-a-mole game was happening and it was like at least I would know that my minimum payments were done and then if there was any additional payments on top of that, I could do that. But at first, like, just having it automatically done, and so I didn't even have to think about it, was huge. So that's also a really good thing to think about. And even like bill payments, sometimes automatically going through. In saying that, some people don't like that. Sometimes they actually physically want to like go into their online banking, especially when you first start working on your money. So then you kind of start to have some control of what's going on. So that's also like, that's where I was saying, like, everybody can be different. Like, what would work for you? What would work for you for like transfers and payments? Something to think about. When it comes to my emotions with money, I still check in with that. Like, what is going on? And, if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, the my Spendy and the gang, they recently went out and bought, a really beautiful, like, patio set, and then a money meeting was gonna happen, and everybody was panicked because, like, how much money was spent at Costco on this, patio set that they actually had bought the year before as well. So, just kind of like bringing some humor into some stuff that actually does happen, because I can obsess about something. So I have a paddleboard. I've talked about it. That was one of my big first purchases when I started my financial sobriety. And then it's kind of gone to like, I would love a kayak, and Costco has like kayaks. And then it was like $100 off. And it was like, I don't like, no, we have our paddle boards, but like, what's really going on? Right? What's really going on? And my brain sometimes my brain needs to be occupied with thoughts of like obsessions sometimes of some sort. And that's what I like to call my addict brain. Some of you might not completely resonate with the word addict, but like I'm an addict. I know that for sure. Like, and when it comes to addiction and addictive like behaviors, like my brain loves to just like latch on to something. It's just like, ha, like I'm coming for you. And it is thinking about something. And it's like, yeah, it was like, oh yeah, the kayak thing. And then, yeah, but it was like, what was really going on? Like, it was like, I really want to get out on the water. Like, I was just craving getting out on the water. And it was like, oh, and it was not it hasn't been great here, the weather-wise, right this at the moment, and I haven't gotten out on my paddleboard yet, but I just took my dog down to the beach that day, and it was just like, I just needed to, like, be by the water, and I needed to just kinda stop. Like, and so what I was craving with the thought of the kayak was, like, I needed to be out somewhere, I needed to be outside, and I needed to have some alone time. And it's not always that simple, but it was, like I was just kept thinking like, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a kayak this year? Wouldn't it be nice to have a kayak this year?" And it's like, "No, I have my paddleboard. Like, I can get out on the water whenever I want, like, and I can take myself, um, down to the beach whenever I want," right? So, our brains can just really take us away on different tangents, quite often. So checking in with our emotions, what is really going on? I think that's such an important question. And it was one that like kept me really in check with my spending when I first started my financial sobriety, was because okay, like I would all of a sudden think like, "Oh, I got to go get a new outfit." It's like I was trying to be someone different. I was trying to feel different. I was trying to look different, because I wasn't happy. And I thought that if I showed up to work in a beautiful outfit and beautiful shoes and like my hair done just right, like that I would be happy. And I was freaking miserable. But today, as you heard, I was able to say, like, hey, I have a time where I can feel grateful about that, which feels really good. Speaking of checking in with your emotions, right? Um, Budgeting for things that I want is something that I think is important. So, back in the day, kind of as I was talking about with like credit card debt and all that, it was like just, if I wanted it, it was like think, buy, um, remorse, shame, all of this stuff, the shame train would start going, but I would just like think about it, buy it like on my credit card, and away we would go. And actually, speaking of my paddleboard, that was the first thing that I actually saved for. So, like, I could have done that with a kayak, but at the same time, like, I don't need a kayak. It was like this wanting of something that I actually don't actually need to go and purchase something. But at the same point, like, I'm a big believer in not having like complete deprivation of stuff because I think that can be really harmful for our money. So, if there's something you really want, maybe start to save for it. And, maybe not a huge big ticket item right away. Maybe it's something just like a paddleboard or something like if you wanted to go away for a few nights this summer and starting to save for that. What would that look like for you? Could that like pre-authorized transfer into a savings account be something you start to think about? I know for myself, like starting to plan it. That's what all this is about when it comes to spending is planning, right? You've heard me talk about building a spending plan every month, talking about daily spending, tracking your spending, connecting with it, and, planning for certain things that you want. And then it feels so much better when you actually like buy something with your debit card instead of your credit card. It just feels so much better. Another thing I do that I think everybody needs to start doing, even if you're just starting this journey, celebrate your money. Celebrate little wins. Celebrate, like, hey, I took my big limit credit card out of my wallet and there's no longer a party in my wallet. I love that party in my wallet for some reason today. You probably heard me say that a couple times now. But or like I was able to go and save up and then purchase something I wanted. I was had an impulse to buy something, but I didn't. And that felt really good. So even little things, start to celebrate that stuff. It is so important. And there was a study I read one time where it was like negative stuff literally like sticks in your brain so much easier than like good news stuff. So like the study explained it of like we have to manually like put those thoughts into our existence. And I thought that was such a great way to put it of like, okay, what are we celebrating? What does that look like? And even if it's something small, because people automatically it's like they can't say anything good about money at first. It's just like it's like something that feels so hard, it's overwhelming. Like name one thing. Like I checked in with my emotions like when I really felt like I wanted to buy something. That is huge. Little things turn into like huge things. So I'm going to end with that on being the last thing that I like to do. And when it comes to my financial sobriety routine is celebrate the little things. They turn into big things. And the energy of money is just so beautiful in that way. And if you're just starting your journey, you may have just like rolled your eyes at listening or watching or reading this of being like, yeah, okay, Linda, like, of course, like the energy of money, everything's going to be great. I'm not talking about like spiritually bypassing like and toxic positivity about like manifesting. I'm just saying that like I know for sure that when you start working on your money starts to work for you. I know that for sure. I see it every single day and I've experienced it myself over and over again. Habits and routine are so important when it comes to our money. I really hope that you were able to get some tips out of this lesson today that resonated with you, even if it's just like acknowledgement and celebrating your money. If you got that out of today, like that makes me super happy. Thank you so much for being here. I would love for you to subscribe, review the episode if you enjoyed it. Let's get this message of financial sobriety school out to all the peeps who need it. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. And I will talk to you in a couple weeks.